My name is Noah. I'm a 35-year-old single father living just outside Denver, Colorado, raising my 8-year-old daughter Lily on my own. Her mother left us years ago, not with a fight, not with a goodbye, just silence and a note on the kitchen counter. Ever since, it's been just me and Lily against the world, and honestly, we were doing all right. I worked hard juggling a remote IT job and part-time consulting gigs to keep things stable for Lily. She was the light of my life, my reason for waking up every morning. We didn't have much, but we had love, laughter, and our little routines: movie nights, pancake Saturdays, walks around Sloan's Lake. It was a quiet life, but it was ours. That's when my older sister Elaine reached out. Elaine had always been the successful one, lived in Los Angeles, married a financial advisor, drove a Tesla, and posted yoga selfies like it was her job. We weren't exactly close, but she called me up one day and said, "You and Lily deserve a real break, Noah. We're planning a family vacation to Hawaii. Everyone's going. You should come." I hesitated. I hadn't taken a real vacation in years. Hawaii sounded magical but expensive. Sensing my pause, Elaine added quickly, "Look, you don't have to pay for everything. Just chip in where you can. We'll split stuff." She made it sound manageable. Said her husband Rob would handle the Airbnb if I booked the flights, that our brother Mason would take care of the rental cars, that meals would be casual, flexible. It all sounded generous. And I wanted Lily to see the ocean for the first time. So against my better judgment, I agreed. I started saving aggressively, sold some unused tech gear, took on extra freelance projects. I even skipped a few meals to make it all work. In the end, I booked 2 round-trip tickets to Maui, nearly $1,800, and paid for travel insurance, luggage fees, and seat upgrades so Lily wouldn't be stuck in a cramped row. When I told her, she screamed and hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "Are we really going, Daddy?" Like palm trees and volcanoes, Hawaii. I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, we're really going." For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing something big, something beautiful, a memory Lily would carry with her forever. If only I had known what was waiting for us on that island. Touching down in Maui felt like entering another world. The air was thick with ocean breeze and blooming plumeria, and Lily pressed her face against the airport window in awe. "It smells like sunshine," she whispered. I laughed. That's exactly what it smelled like. Elaine and the rest of the family were already there. Rob waved us over, sunglasses perched atop his head, holding a coconut drink like he'd lived here his whole life. Elaine pulled Lily into a tight hug, though she barely acknowledged me. "Glad you made it," she said curtly. "We were starting to think you'd missed the flight." Odd tone, but I brushed it off. At the car rental lot, things got interesting. Mason showed up with a large SUV and informed us there wasn't enough space for everyone. I assumed they'd arranged a second car as promised. Nope. "You and Lily can just grab a rideshare," Elaine said, already piling her designer luggage into the back. I blinked. "You said Mason booked enough for all of us." "Well, he did. For us," she shrugged. "You've got the app right." No one offered to cover the cost. Still trying to stay positive for Lily, I smiled and ordered a lift to the Airbnb, which, by the way, was stunning. Ocean view, private beach access, big enough to sleep 10 comfortably. But when we arrived, Elaine was already assigning rooms and none were for us. "The master's ours, of course," she said, pointing. "Mason and his girlfriend get the second suite, and Mom and Dad get the downstairs room." "What about me and Lily?" Elaine raised an eyebrow. "There's a pull-out couch in the den." Lily looked up at me confused. "Are we not sleeping in a room?" I forced a smile. It'll be like camping. Each meal became a quiet power play. Rob and Elaine ordered expensive dinners at beachside restaurants, then split the check without asking if we could afford it. When I suggested we do groceries and cook together, Elaine rolled her eyes. We're on vacation, not prepping for doomsday. By the third day, I realized we weren't guests. We were outsiders. Lily asked why no one wanted to swim with her, why she wasn't invited to the paddleboarding trip or beach volleyball. I didn't have answers, only awkward silences. Each day we spent more time alone, and each night Lily curled up beside me on that creaky pull-out couch asking in a tiny voice, "Did we do something wrong, Daddy?" I told her no, but inside I was starting to wonder the same thing. By the fourth day, the message was loud and clear. Even if no one said it outright, we didn't belong. Lily and I started spending our mornings walking the beach alone, collecting shells and laughing at the way the waves chased our feet. It was the only time we felt free. The rest of the day, we were ghosts in our own vacation. Breakfasts were eaten without us. I'd walk into the kitchen to find half-eaten acai bowls and empty coffee mugs, everyone already gone to some planned adventure. I never got an invite, not once. Once I tried to insert myself. I offered to drive everyone to a waterfall trail they'd been talking about. Mason looked up from his phone and muttered, "We already booked a tour. It's kind of full." Later, I found out they had 2 open seats. Lily overheard Elaine calling her clingy during a conversation with her husband. She came to me teary-eyed asking what that meant. It broke me. One night I stayed up after Lily had fallen asleep scrolling through the vacation photos they had posted online. Everyone was in them, smiling, kayaking, eating at fancy restaurants. Everyone except us. I confronted Elaine the next morning. "We're family," I said. "Why are you treating us like strangers?" She didn't even flinch. "Noah, you chose this life. You isolated yourself for years. You can't expect to just show up and be center of attention." "I don't want attention. I just want Lily to feel included." Elaine gave a tight smile. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before having a kid you couldn't raise properly." That was the moment the vacation stopped being painful. It became personal. I clenched my jaw, nodded, and walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. But in my chest, something started hardening. Not hate, but resolve. That night, Lily and I walked down to the shore again. She looked up at me with sleepy eyes and said, "I think the ocean likes us more than they do." I hugged her tightly. "It doesn't matter what they think, baby. We're okay, just you and me." She nodded. "Yeah, just us." And from that moment forward, I knew if they didn't want us, we didn't need them. But they were going to regret underestimating me. Senior year was just survival mode. With Brittany off at Middleton College pursuing a degree in luxury brand marketing, yes, that's a thing you'd think life at home would calm down. But instead of competing with her in person, I now had to compete with Brittany's amazing college life updates every single day. My parents would beam while reading her texts aloud at dinner, like they were news bulletins Brittany got into Theta Delta. Brittany's dating a finance major with a Tesla. Brittany's professor says she has real potential. Meanwhile, I was trying to finish high school unnoticed. I didn't go to prom despite my mom going on and on about how it was my last chance to feel like a normal girl. I skipped every social event, every school trip, every club photo. I spent all my free time either in the computer lab or clocking in shifts at ByteFix, a local tech repair store. That place became my second home. I'd show up early just to avoid dinner at home, and I'd stay late helping customers or tinkering with broken builds just for fun. Most kids my age were out partying or preparing for college tours. I was learning to solder motherboards and optimize BIOS settings. The manager, a guy named Evan, took a liking to me not in a creepy way, thankfully. He let me work extra hours and even gave me broken PCs to take home and experiment with. He used to joke, "You've got more hustle than half the techs I've trained." What my parents didn't know was that I'd opened a secret savings account months earlier. Every birthday check, every bonus hour, every freelance coding gig, I funneled it into that account. I didn't even keep a debit card on me just in case someone snooped. I was determined I wouldn't be like my parents stuck in a toxic house pretending everything was fine. The turning point came when I received a full-ride scholarship to Eastbrook State's computer science program. It wasn't some Ivy League name that my mom could brag about over wine with her PTA friends, but it was a top-tier tech school and mine. I remember opening the email alone in the ByteFix back room, letting the news wash over me in stunned silence. I had done it. I had a way out. When I finally told my parents, their response was predictable. Eastbrook, my mom wrinkled her nose. "Aren't they kind of relaxed about appearance there?" My dad chimed in. "Well, at least you'll be able to focus on your little hobby." Little hobby. That little hobby would become the very thing that changed everything. So I doubled down. I picked up every shift I could. I took on side gigs from classmates who needed custom PC setups or last-minute Java help. By the time I graduated, I had enough saved up for a security deposit on a tiny studio apartment near campus, and I found a roommate through a Women in Tech Discord server who seemed kind and just as determined to escape as I was. I didn't tell my parents I was moving out until the day after graduation. While they were hosting a brunch for Brittany and her sorority sisters, I loaded my life into an old Ford Focus and drove away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel ugly or invisible. I felt free. 2 days before we were set to fly back, I woke up to find the Airbnb nearly empty. No laughter, no sound of coffee brewing, no one by the pool. I checked my phone, no messages. I stepped into the kitchen. Elaine's luggage was gone. Mason's sandals were no longer by the door. At first, I thought maybe they'd left early for a morning hike or brunch, but then I noticed something on the fridge, a folded paper taped there casually. It was a flight itinerary dated the night before. They had all changed their flights and flown back without saying a word. I stood there frozen. Lily came out rubbing her eyes. "Where is everyone?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. I scrambled to check my own ticket. I had booked through a third-party app and paid up front, no refunds. But when I logged in, the reservation had been canceled. Panic surged in my chest. I called Elaine. No answer. I texted Mason. Nothing. Finally, I called our mom. She picked up sounding groggy. "Oh, you're still there?" "Yes," I said slowly, "because no one told me you were leaving early, and my flights are gone. Someone canceled them." A pause. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding, Noah. Maybe the system auto-adjusted." "I didn't cancel them, Mom." She sighed. "Well, we're already back now. You'll have to figure something out." They left us stranded. I couldn't believe it. They had used my money, my time, my trust, and when it was no longer convenient to keep up the pretense, they vanished, with nothing more than a passive-aggressive note and silence. I paced the room in disbelief. Lily sat quietly on the couch, her small backpack on her lap. "Did we miss the plane, Daddy?" I knelt beside her. "No, baby, they left early, but we'll get home, I promise." I had just enough left in my bank account to book 2 economy seats on a red-eye back to Denver. I used the last of my credit to pay for an Uber to the airport and a couple of sandwiches at the terminal. We flew home tired, silent, numb. When we got back to our small apartment, I unpacked our sandy clothes in the dark. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the ceiling. I had been a fool. I gave and gave because I believed that if I was generous enough, kind enough, patient enough, they'd finally see me, accept me, include me. But all I'd done was fund a trip for people who didn't even care if I made it back. That was the last time they'd take anything from me. And the moment I decided I was going to take it all back, the days after returning home were quiet, almost eerily so. Lily went back to school like nothing had happened, but I could see the sadness in her drawings. The beach she once colored with joy now had 2 lonely figures and no sun. I, on the other hand, was burning inside. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the ignored messages, the cold glances, the sudden flight changes, the fact that no one, even my own mother, had the decency to say goodbye. At first I thought about letting it go, chalk it up to family dynamics, but then I looked at my bank statements. $1,800 for flights, $600 in luggage fees, upgrades, and snacks. $420 for the ride shares, no one split. $320 for meals they pressured me into joining. $1,200 in deposits and extra resort charges, all out of my own pocket. And not a single thank you. That's when it hit me. They didn't just ignore me. They used me. They saw me as the quiet, desperate-to-be-loved younger brother who would cover the tab and never complain. So I started collecting evidence. Emails, texts, receipts, screenshots. I went through every transaction, every message. I made a spreadsheet so detailed it would make a tax auditor weep. I organized it by date, expense type, who was involved and who promised what. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to make a point. Then with one long email, polite but firm, I sent it out to every single person on that trip. Attached, you'll find a detailed breakdown of the expenses I personally covered for the recent Hawaii vacation. Please send your portion within 14 days. I've included routing information. Let me know if you need clarification. I didn't accuse, I didn't shame. But I made sure they understood. Within hours, Mason replied with a passive-aggressive, "I thought you offered to help, but fine." A day later, Rob Venmo'd me $100 like it was some kind of joke, Elaine. She left me on red, but I didn't stop there. I filed a small claims case for the non-refundable Airbnb deposits I'd paid up front, proving via text that they promised to reimburse. I contacted the resort about the charges under my name and submitted a fraud claim to my credit card company for several of the bills Rob had signed using my information. It wasn't about revenge, it was about boundaries. That same week, I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on socials, and took Lily out for ice cream. She smiled for the first time in days. "Does this mean we don't have to see Aunt Elaine anymore?" she asked, hopeful. I nodded. "It means we don't have to let anyone treat us like that again." That night, we danced around our tiny kitchen while cooking spaghetti the way we used to. No ocean view, no fancy dinners, just music, laughter, and peace. And for the first time, I realized we had finally come home. It didn't take long for the ripple effects to hit. A week after I sent the email and began filing claims, my inbox lit up like a Christmas tree, except none of the messages were joyful. Elaine finally responded, not with an apology, but with a long-winded tirade about how I had embarrassed the family by being so transactional. She said I was weaponizing generosity. Imagine that. The woman who left my child and me stranded in another state thought I was the villain for daring to ask for fairness. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, I had plenty, but I had something better: receipts, literal ones. Rob sent a half-hearted follow-up with a screenshot of a transfer for $300 and the caption, "Hope this shuts you up." He spelled my name wrong in the memo. I reported the message to Venmo and refunded the money. I wasn't accepting scraps. Meanwhile, Mason, the peacemaker of the family, called me late one night to talk things through. He opened with, "Look, man, I get it, but you're kind of blowing this out of proportion." To which I calmly replied, "Did you or did you not promise to split the rental car?" He paused. "Well, I guess, but I didn't think you'd actually keep track." That was it. That was the entire dynamic summed up in one sentence. They were counting on me not to care enough to stand up for myself. But I did. And suddenly they had to face the uncomfortable truth that I was no longer the easy, quiet pushover they had molded me into. Over the next few weeks, word got around our extended family. Some relatives quietly messaged me saying they were proud. Others stayed silent. My mom called once asking if I really had to make such a big deal. I asked her a simple question: would you have done the same thing to Brittany? She hung up. The fallout wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Because I had flagged the fraudulent charges and backed them up with evidence, the resort removed nearly $800 from my credit card bill. The small claims case for the Airbnb deposit. It was accepted and moving forward. The process would take months, but the court had seen enough to believe I had a case. I was reclaiming every dollar not just for myself, but as a message. You don't get to treat people like disposable tools. In the meantime, Lily and I made new routines. We signed up for a weekend art class, cooked new recipes every Friday night, and even started planning a mini road trip to the Grand Canyon, just the two of us. No family drama, no hidden expectations. Just a dad and his daughter building their own world. And every time I got another passive-aggressive message from Elaine or a guilt-tripping voicemail from my mom, I hit delete without even listening. Because once you know your worth, silence becomes power. A month after the trip, Lily and I were finally finding our rhythm again. The shadows from Hawaii were still there, subtle, lingering, but fading. We had stopped talking about Elaine. We stopped expecting texts that would never come. Life was quieter, but it was ours. Then a letter came. A real one-envelope stamp handwritten address from my mother. Inside 2 pages of carefully worded guilt. She wrote about family values, forgiveness, and how one trip shouldn't tear us apart. She said Elaine had been under stress, that Rob had meant well, and that I should consider how my actions had escalated tension. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what Lily and I went through. Just a polite suggestion that we should come to the Thanksgiving dinner this year and start fresh. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I slid it back into the envelope and dropped it in the recycling bin. Because here's what they didn't understand. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the same table that taught you to starve. I didn't need their approval anymore. A few weeks later, I got a notification that the court had ruled in my favor for the Airbnb deposit. Elaine would be required to reimburse me $950 plus court fees. She didn't show up to the hearing, of course. Just sent in a short statement that called me petty and ungrateful. I read it with a smile. Meanwhile, I started a side blog just for fun about fatherhood resilience and setting boundaries. I titled it, "Just Us Two." I shared stories about Lily's silly bedtime questions, our favorite meals, and yes, even the Hawaii trip, though I changed names. I didn't need revenge. I just needed release. One evening, as I was closing my laptop, Lily climbed into my lap with a drawing. It was us, me and her, standing on a beach. No one else. She had drawn the sun big and bright in the corner. "That's just for us, Daddy," she said. "No one can take it away." I nearly cried. Because she was right. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up when no one's watching, who sees your worth even when you're at your lowest, who stays not for what you give, but because of who you are. So when Thanksgiving came around, I didn't answer the invitation. Lily and I baked a small turkey, made mashed potatoes, and had our own little dinner by candlelight. We went around the table, just the two of us, saying what we were thankful for. Lily said, "I'm thankful we're not in Hawaii." I said, "I'm thankful we're free." A year passed. Lily turned 8. Her hair had grown longer, her laugh louder. She was thriving in school and art class, even in soccer, which surprised us both. Her teacher sent home notes about how kind she was, how confident, how she lit up the classroom. I hung one of those notes on our fridge like a trophy. As for me, I'd been promoted at work. I now led a small development team for a nonprofit that built educational platforms for underserved communities. The hours were long, but the purpose was clear. Every day felt like I was repairing a tiny piece of the world. We'd moved into a slightly bigger apartment, nothing fancy, but it had a small balcony with space for 2 chairs and a potted tomato plant Lily named Captain Juice. Every Sunday morning, we'd sit out there with pancakes and hot chocolate, talking about everything and nothing, and every once in a while, Lily would ask, "Do you think Aunt Elaine ever missed us?" And I'd say maybe. Then we'd move on, because she didn't need to know how deep the wounds went. She didn't need to carry the bitterness I had to work so hard to let go of. One day as I picked her up from school, she handed me a flyer. It was for the school's annual family essay contest. I raised an eyebrow. "You entering this?" She nodded shyly. "What's your topic?" She smiled. "I wrote about you." I blinked. "Me?" She nodded again. "It's called My Dad is My Safe Place." I nearly lost it in the parking lot. The essay didn't win, but her teacher emailed me privately and said it had made her cry. Later that night, I found the essay in Lily's backpack. In her careful, uneven handwriting, she had written, "My dad is my safe place because he never lets the bad stuff stick. He teaches me how to stand up even when it's hard. He tells me stories and he listens to mine. He makes pancakes and always saves the last one for me. He's not just my dad. He's my hero." I kept that paper in my desk drawer, not to hold on to the praise, but as a reminder that even though I was never the golden child, even though I wasn't the one they took pictures of at holidays or bragged about to their friends, even though I had to fight just to be heard in my own family, I still became the kind of man worth writing about. I don't know if Elaine ever reflected on what she did. Maybe in her version, I'm still the villain. That's fine, because Lily knows the truth. And in the end, that's all that matters.